Welcome to the Family Business Audiocast on LinkedIn. I am R. Adam Smith, creator of this audiocast series. As an entrepreneur, investor, founder, investment banker, and board leader the last 25 years, I'm fortunate for my many experiences within the family firm industry. A warm thank you to our live audience on LinkedIn today and for those listening in the future. A brief comment on why I created this broadcast. Private companies are a passion of mine, having grown up in a family of entrepreneurs and having engaged for 2 decades in deals, strategic transformations, investments, and boards with an array of fascinating family enterprises, family firms, and family offices. I founded this series to offer a useful platform for listeners to hear from veterans, academics, and leaders in the vast family firm ecosystem. Whether you're a family business owner, building, running, or advising a family office, or just expanding your family office activities, I hope these conversations are useful and enlightening. And now it's time to turn our attention to our accomplished guests on today's episode. I'm very pleased to host Robbie Heeger, is the founder and CEO of Endowment. Robbie, it's great to have you here today with me.
It's great to be here and nice to spend some time talking about endowment together, Adam.
Definitely. It's great company. I'm excited to share more about it today and really talk about the evolution of the space of philanthropy as well as the DAF structure and your company as well, and really being at the cutting edge of philanthropic solutions for institutions and non-institutions alike. So a bit on Robbie first. Robbie is a visionary leader and the president and CEO, as I mentioned, of Endowment, which is revolutionizing philanthropy. It is the first blockchain-powered community foundation. We'll talk more about what that means. Robbie is a self-taught software engineer and leveraging this experience to create a transformative platform founded several years ago that allows crypto holders and others to make tax-efficient, impactful donations to nonprofits. Under his leadership, Endowment has emerged as a trailblazer in crypto philanthropy, enabling innovative solutions for wealth management and charitable giving. Robbie has a background in media and technology and a passion for creating equitable systems. And so his work bridges the gap between cutting edge technology and traditional philanthropy, setting a new standard for transparency, accessibility, and social impact in today's digital age. That sounds good. We're delighted to have you today. I guess first, the founding of the company and how did that happen?
Well, first off, thanks so much for having me here, Adam. And, I think this is an even more impactful and important conversation after the week that we've just had and the last 2 weeks that we've just had with the wildfires down in Southern California. And just thinking of friends and family out there who are affected and just want to, thank everybody for taking a little bit of their time this week to think about impact. I think oftentimes impact is sort of the farther down the stack in the list of priorities, and it was that way for me as well. And it was only through learning about the tax benefits and the flexibility of a donor advised fund that I really got involved in what wound up being a back door to a real source of meaning and purpose for me, not only in my career, but in my personal life as well. I think giving is like one of the happiest and most fulfilling things you can do as a person. Um, and really my story begins with just wanting to be tax efficient. I come from a family where I have one brother and he's a CPA, and he is normally the guy who is helping me with my taxes because when you got somebody in the family, you got somebody to pick up the phone to talk to. And this was in 2019. We were talking on the phone, and he was asking me about the digital assets that I had been holding, that I had invested in, the cryptocurrencies that I had invested in a few years before that. And he was like, "Are you going to give those away?" And I was like, I was thinking about it, but I don't know anybody who takes these digital assets. at the time I had been in the habit of using a donor advised fund, which is basically like a charitable checking account. It's like a little private family foundation uh, in a box
Right.
without all the overhead and the board members and the governance. You're basically trusting a community foundation, another 501c3 tax exempt organization, to administer like the micro family foundation for your personal charitable giving. And and I was doing that at the San Francisco Jewish Community Federation and Endowment Fund. And me and my brother were actually doing a donor advised fund together, where we would give stocks, like uh, we had been doing some investing, and we would make some gains on a particular position and give that stock, instead of selling it and giving the cash. We would give that stock to the donor advised fund, and that way you don't actually incur the gain of selling the asset. You just
Yes.
donate the thing and get the whole donation. And so I was used to that with stocks, but then I started having more holdings in digital assets, and there was a gap in what was available. You couldn't really give the long tail of digital assets. And there really wasn't a single donor advised fund that was trying to be this kind of ultimate giving machine.
So
And
you saw a hole in the market, and
yeah,
also you saw where the market was going, the philanthropy was expanding, and especially for the high net worth and family office market.
I think it's classically been something that is just for high net worth and family office individuals, people who meet that market. But increasingly we're seeing DAFs play a role at even smaller sizes, and especially with younger professionals earlier in their career, when they're getting equity as a part of their compensation package. And so I think it's a great bridge into the world of wealth management. It is like a really pure first experience for somebody who either has a windfall financial gain, or maybe is set to inherit wealth, or is starting to inherit wealth, or even is starting to make their own wealth independently. It's a way for them to sort of mitigate their taxes without going into the deep end of charitable remainder trusts or charitable lead trusts or family foundations or any of these more complicated structures that family offices and financial advisors leverage all the time, but tend to be further down the priority stack. So this is a good entry point, I think, for a lot of people into this. How do I give back with the gains that I'm making in my personal finances?
Okay. So yeah, in fact, donor advised funds have become a cornerstone of a lot of philanthropic strategies because they are more flexible and they have certain tax advantages. Just talk a little bit more about that professional journey of yours in like deciding the DAF structure, and then how does the DAF structure relate to the next gen? Because a lot of the things we talk about on this podcast are next gen, increasingly related to their lives, both in terms of their wealth flows, but also their passions.
Yeah, my professional journey was super super serendipitous, just kind of like uh a product of my upbringing, and just being you know in an environment, in the right place, in the right time, to see the status quo change as I was getting educated. So I was in college around 2010, and learning about broadcast media, journalism, communications. Was really into this idea of how do we leverage technology to have a better informed populace? How do we use technology to disseminate knowledge farther and wider than we have in the past? And that led me to an internship at Apple in their media products division. So, iTunes, the App Store, Apple Music, books, TV, podcasts, really anything digital content on an Apple device was all powered by a group of teams spread out across the world that were curating all of the new media that was coming into existence in 155 different markets. And they all used this one piece of technology that was pretty expansive and gnarly, so to speak. And it was our team's job to help teach them on how to curate and how to leverage the capabilities of the software to help them tell a story with what new media was entering the market. And I did that for like 7 years. And it was an amazing, like, just the most amazing first job that I could have had out of college. Consider myself very, very lucky to have spent the time that I spent at Apple. But also, like, when you see things happening at scale and you see the impact that scaled technologies can have, you start to think about, like, what is the root motivation of this technology? And in the case of Apple's media products, it's to like advance the culture. And I was looking
Hmm.
more for at that time, I sort of got a little burnt out on advancing the culture, and wanted to do more work of consequence, more impact focused work, and work where it felt like, I was a little bit closer to the ground floor. Um, and that was what led me to take a little break, sort of step away from Apple, and at the end of 2018. And then, as I was becoming more and more interested in the technologies that collectively are called the blockchain or distributed ledger technologies or Bitcoin or smart contracts, Web3, whatever you want to call it, whatever buzzword you want to affiliate with with Bitcoin and all of its friends. I was getting more and more into that and learning how to code as a part of
Hmm.
my personal growth story. And um, and then this opportunity, or like the gap that we were talking about earlier, Adam, where like there was this hole in the market where there was nobody who could take digital assets as charitable gifts. I was like, ooh, like there's work
Right.
of consequence
That's a
that can scale, that is geared towards a newer, younger investor class that has a broader mix of assets in their portfolio. And when we talk about
right.
like the great wealth migration that's happening over the next 30 years from boomers to Gen X and Gen Y and Gen Z, um, you know,
Right.
those investors or those individuals are finding their identity both as investors and as professionals and as societal participants. And in general, they skew to be very impact oriented. The stats on millennials and Gen Z individuals is that they give much more frequently than the general population, um, and they give at larger amounts. And I think that's like a really exciting, very hopeful version of the future that I want to try and catalyze. And that was sort of the motivation for starting Endowment, was like, how do we get better at making impact a part of an investor's story
Mm.
from the very earliest days when they're just starting to make capital for the first time, before they wind up in situations where they're making huge
Hmm.
windfalls and have to try and figure out what to do with it for the first time. That they'll already have a history of giving. And I think, bringing them modern solutions for that giving is a really powerful and exciting high growth area for not only fintech, but also philanthropy and donor advised funds in general.
Yes, I agree with that. We know the market is huge. Statistics I see about the size of the crypto market are varied, somewhere between 5 and $10 billion in the U.S. But certainly, looking at some of the stats at Statistica and Forbes and McKinsey, we're looking at at least 15-20% CAGR growth,
Right.
and probably more than that in the current market of the current administration, et cetera. Um, so we're witnessing this massive shift in wealth, not just generationally, but also towards alternative asset classes. We talk a lot about alternative assets classes on the podcast, and of course, I'm in the family office and alternative investment industry, so I'm seeing this massive growth, including crypto. So, um, these blockchain powered institutions are getting large and they're transforming decision making and very active in, obviously coming from wealth generation, they're very active in the family office market. And crypto is also becoming part of both public and private alternative investment portfolios. So, what I see looking at endowment is you're leveraging innovations really to create a more democratic um, and effective model for philanthropy, right? Um, so, can you talk a bit about the family philanthropy relationship for endowment and firms like yours? How do you create that dialogue and get involved with the philanthropic relationship, and where um, where do you see that relationship going the next 5 or 10 years? Like, how large do you think that philanthropy can become within the family offices with endowment? Because it seems like the story is just beginning, really.
Yeah, I mean, we're 5 years into this at this point, and I think we still haven't really broken out of our shell yet. They say overnight successes take 7 years to make happen. I think we're still about a year or two away from really breaking out and starting to see us operating at that 9, 10, 11 figure scale that you see major community foundations operating at. But it's sitting right there. And largely, I think it's sitting right there because the alternative asset market is poised to just have higher beta growth than the broader traditional equities market, right? That where are people having their biggest gains, their uh, biggest taxable incurrences from their portfolio, right? Like what of their assets have the highest tax obligations? It's going to be those impact or alternative or digital asset investments that they bought at the earliest stage and grow to 10 or 100 or 1,000 times their original size. And that makes these alternative investments the perfect DAF asset, the perfect charitable asset, really, because you're taking a huge amount of tax obligation off the table by giving an appreciated alternative investment that has experienced significant growth. And so, not only is this kind of the new frontier for the family office about, okay, how do I get involved in crypto, or how do I get involved in impact investing, or how do I get involved in alternative investments? But also, now, if you're successful in that space, you now have the ideal asset for making a charitable gift that's optimally tax minimizing. And so I think that combination is what sets endowment up for success down the line. But it requires us to be able to adopt the whole spectrum of alternative asset types. And to that effect, you brought up our blockchain native infrastructure. Like, there's nothing really new about what we're doing on the blockchain. It's just that it gives us a lot of flexibility and a huge decrease in the amount of overhead it takes to manage a complex array of different asset classes under one record keeping system. We're effectively using the blockchain as a record keeping architecture. And that at its like basic level is very simple, and then there's more growth that can happen into like the more creative applications of like community governance and
Yeah,
and
I understand the structure, and I think that's becoming increasingly clear to the market. And at the same time, I feel like crypto is such an unusual asset class and experience because it's been so dynamic and so explosive, especially for younger people, that it's almost like the IPOs in 1999, right? Around the tulip craze in the original the original psychology of market craziness. But um, certainly crypto will grow, but I think that there's been such an explosive amount of wealth created with, especially with younger people, that there is this sense of I want to be able to redeploy that with a sense of purpose. I would be
well, if I can
curious.
jump in really quick, Adam, on that point, for a lot of people, they make $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 bet
right? That represents 1 to 3 to 5% of their net worth on some of these alternative assets, right? And it it explodes like you described. And then they're kind of like, especially because it happens on the internet, there's kind of this feeling of like, I found this money under my mattress. Like it's kind of this. It is this sensation of found capital, like where you were making a way out there bet and it works out, and now all of a sudden you've taken 1% of your net worth and turned it into a doubling of your net worth. And because of that sort of almost disconnected or like serendipity feeling that you get from the investment, it also lends itself to turning it into impact. It's like, I feel like I should give some of this back because, like, all I did was buy it early, you know?
Right. Like, now what do? I have all this liquidity, right? Or I can create liquidity, but I have this liquidity and I feel like it's a blessing. And I want to put that into
That's right.
anything. I want to put, like, of course, some of it might go into a startup or to the family or savings or investing, but that emotional connection, I think, is much quicker to be able to give it away, which is exciting. And frankly, I think our society needs that movement, even in the U.S., which is probably the most philanthropic country, large
And
country in the world.
it's a great invitation into the family office experience, right? Like if you're a family office manager or professional in the family office space or family business space, and you're working with a second generation or a third generation or a rising generation of any number that is trying to figure out how it can get involved or what role it should play in the family business or in the family office. Here's this opportunity to translate what has usually been relegated to like broker dealers and custodians with Fidelity and Schwab Charitable and say, hey, here's like a tech forward environment that you'll love to use. And it takes the assets that you're making your first investment theses around. And now you get to carve your own identity as a participant in the broader family office. And so I think it's a endowment serves as a great tool to try and bring in that rising generation that doesn't really have a vehicle for feeling like, here's my contribution to the space.
Okay. I like that. That's good. That's exactly what I was thinking. Let's move back to your own company. We have about 5 minutes left. So let's talk about the company itself as well. A little bit about your organizational structure and your culture. Like, what is your true north as a firm when you hire people and you walk in the door and you're thinking about the brand and where it's going? Would love to hear, like, uh, what do you want Endowment to be known for in the industry, and then also thinking about society as a whole.
It's um it's a really interesting question that we've spent a lot of time on. So I'm grateful that you're bringing it up. At at its core, endowment is a series of smart contracts, right? So it's like this, it's there's this root level, this very at the very core of the planet that makes up endowment is this protocol for tax mitigation and charitable giving. And the question becomes like, okay, if you have that as your core, what are the services that you could leverage that core for? And so endowment.org is our community foundation, and they provide donor advised funds, and that's how we leverage this core of being able to do custodian agnostic, asset agnostic tax mitigation through philanthropic engagement. And so from a narrative perspective, it's like, if you make if you do really well in the market, you should spend some time thinking about how you give back to the community that got you where you are today. And but that's not the only way to do tax mitigation with alternative assets or with, emerging technologies. And so we see an opportunity to take that same core, that same sort of center of gravity for us. That is the protocol that keeps the records, that manages the accounts, that handles the grant making program, and turn that into other kinds of popular vehicles when it comes to tax mitigation. So whether that's the charitable remainder trust or the charitable lead trust, like we've been talking about earlier, or even IRAs or 529s, college savings funds, or any of these opportunities to kind of put money aside where the government says, hey, you get a tax break by thinking about your future, by thinking about your community's future, by thinking about your children's future. And I think that's the brand value that we really align ourselves with, which is like, it should be fun, inviting, easy to use, and multimodal, right? Like asset agnostic, custodian agnostic, to be able to put money aside for the future. And whether you're putting money aside for the future for your community through philanthropic giving, or you're putting money aside for your family through college savings funds or lead trusts or gift annuities, right? Or you're putting aside money for yourself through similar vehicles or retirement accounts, like you need a record keeping service at its core. You need the technology at its core that can handle 21st century asset classes and portfolio mixtures. And that's the value of what we see us building at the technology company that builds the DAF platform for endowment.org and is also exploring these other kinds of financial vehicles that allow you to think future forward. And so we sort of see that as our mission at the technology company. Endowment is really two entities. It's a technology company and a nonprofit. And I think you'll see us moving in the direction of expanding our offering, not only to adding features to the donor advised fund provider, but starting to think about like what are other common financial vehicles and scenarios that people in the family office or high net worth or even just retail investor space want to be thinking about to plan for their community or their family's future.
That's great. And lastly, I guess thinking about that and looking forward the next couple of years, what are some milestones you want to achieve for each, for the tech company and for the nonprofit? And then we'll wrap up.
For the nonprofit, I think it's really important that we demonstrate not only the capacity of this technology to facilitate complex donations, but also to demonstrate how we can build new financial institutions that are governed and powered by their community of users. That, at most large national uh, charitable foundations where they're offering donor advised fund programs, there's not a direct line to using and being philanthropic and using your DAF to oversight and accountability of the organization at large. And that's something that the sort of crypto native technology landscape provides us an avenue towards. So you might see us doing some things around like tokenizing membership in the nonprofit, where we look at the way you're using your DAF and give you voting power and sort of governance rights in the organization. I think that's a really powerful way to show like what is going to be new and different about financial institutions of the 21st century when it comes to sort of user controlled or sort of giving that co-op feeling to our financial institutions. Um, and at the tech company, we're really excited about trying to embed into more fintech, into the broader fintech industry, embedding giving as something as natural as having a retirement account. That trying to think about how we create deep connections between custodians or advisors or even tech platforms in the fintech landscape. How do we make it so that tax mitigation and planning for your future is incorporated deeply into the fintech tooling that is driving better yields or better visibility across the entire portfolio? That we want to be that sort of service provider that provides the special compliance scenarios underneath the new technological solutions that are coming out of the fintech landscape.
Yeah, it's exciting. I totally see that. And I'm excited for you. And also, frankly, for the whole space that there's more tools on our phones or online or with our wealth platters, to be more active in philanthropy. It's really, as you were saying, um, the the week that LA is having, the world is having, observing the tension between humanity and nature, and the essential need for philanthropy, and not just from a money perspective, but also from a speed perspective in the private sector.
Yeah.
So lastly, just a bit for our community here, how can they get involved in, learning more about an endowment and thinking about blockchain and crypto in their family office strategies? And then how can they also get involved in the nonprofit?
Well, it would be great to hear from folks who are listening today, or if you're listening to a recording in the future after today's live cast. We would love to hear from you. So if you go to endowment.org, that's endaoment.org. So it's like endowment, but DAO instead of DOW. You can you can read more about what we do and how we do it. But also in the bottom right corner, there's a little chat bubble. And people always think that that's an AI chat bot thing, and it's not. It is real people. There are real people on the other end of that chat bubble, and we would love to hear about what you're working on, what situations you've been facing with your clients or in your practice. And we really, really love working with people who have unique giving scenarios. We were just working with somebody on big collection of baseball cards and how they could give a big collection of baseball cards, or we've been involved in auctions of the Constitution for a real copy of the Constitution. And it's like the more wild and crazy your philanthropic dream, the more fun we have with it at Endowment. So we would just love to hear from everybody who's listening to this. So please do come check us out on endowment.org, and you can always just chat right at us through the little chat bubble in the bottom right of the screen. Or I am very reachable. Feel free to email me, Robbie, Robbie at endowment.org, or message me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. We're here on LinkedIn today. I have become deeply connected to my LinkedIn account as I've become an entrepreneur. So yeah, just don't hesitate to reach out. We would love to hear from you, and keep in mind that if you have something that you would like to donate, but you think maybe it can't be donated because it's too complex or it's too unique, before you say no to that donation, let's have a conversation.
Sounds good, Robbie. Thank you, Robbie Heeger, founder and CEO of Endowment, and also founder and manager of endowment.org. You're building a great company in an important space, an important time of our society and our economic system. And I want to thank you for joining today.
It's been my pleasure, and just really enjoyed getting to know you more, Adam, as well. And wanted to say thanks for hosting this great environment and this holding space for important conversations like this. It means a lot.
You're welcome. And thanks for the attendees today. This is R. Adam Smith signing off. Stay tuned to the next episode of the Family Business Audiocast on LinkedIn and also live on YouTube and X.